What is up, Facebook? What is up, YouTube? What is up, Instagram? I don't even do Facebook, so I don't know why that came up on this live stream, but here we are. Awesome to see 8 of you already on the live stream on YouTube. Appreciate it. What's up, guys? What is going on? Instagram as well. Hope you guys are enjoying your Labor Day. Otherwise, still another Monday. Going to do the same usual Monday things. Feel free to jump in the comment section if you've got questions, real estate or anything else. Otherwise, we usually just kind of treat this as a ask me anything. So feel free to take in whatever direction you like. Otherwise, I'm going to light up tonight. I don't even know what this is actually. I forget. I think this was GG4, whatever that stands for. Good 4. How long am I going to grow my beard? It's a good question. I think technically the hair will just always keep growing. But I'll break the news here first. In theory, not in theory, this Thursday I'm going to go get a haircut. So we'll see. I'm going to meet up with Chris the barber. Maybe we'll decide to trim it. Maybe I'll decide not to. I don't know. But it'll be my first time meeting up with Chris, my barber, since COVID, so it's been a while. I kind of like the beard, but it is getting to be a bit cumbersome right now, but I do kind of feel like it really is part of my brand at this time as well. And I'm attached to the idea of the beard more than I am attached to the beard itself. But I'd be lying if I didn't say like every time I see it, it makes me smile. So if it doesn't brighten anyone else's world, it's at least brightening mine every single day I look in the mirror. Just had some death bubble before this. Nice. Well, I'm in Canada, so marijuana is already legalized federally here. Do I think it'll be federalized in the US? I think so eventually. They just need to figure out what they want to replace the war on drugs with. So they're going to need to go to war with someone. Once they figure out who they can go to war with other than just marijuana, I'm sure that they'll find a way to federally regulate it, tax it, and move on with it. It is extremely unfortunate that right now, in the US, they don't have it already legally or federally legal. It seems crazy to me. It's just a plant. I think if you look at most studies, you'll find that alcohol has a much larger negative impact on society than marijuana does. So it is really unfortunate. You can always come to Canada, hang out here where it's legal. Don't cut the beard. Refine my one rental worth $250 or go buy a second rental home. I refied the first rental and then use that money to go buy the second rental. What's my net worth? Net worth is something that's difficult to measure. So 1, I'm not just going to randomly blurt out a number on the internet, obviously, but 2, even if I was to blurt out a random number, you would really need a lot of context. For example, my YouTube channel or my brand, Matt McKEEFer. Do you place any value on that? I would argue for the last 4 years, I've been investing a lot of time and energy into it. However, it hasn't really been financially successful. However, I could also at any point in time try and turn the tap. And then you might make an argument that like some of my other companies, like my wholesaling business or my real estate education business, they wouldn't be nearly as successful without my personal brand. So do you put a value on my personal brand? I mean, it's something that's interesting because I used to track my net worth very specifically before I quit my day job. And then essentially once I quit it, I stopped caring. But I remember having this discussion with Stefan Arnio once about, his net worth, his personal brand, what it was worth, and he argued that he believed his personal brand was worth millions of dollars. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. The one thing that is interesting, though, is how difficult it is to really place a valuation on those sort of intangibles. So that's something that I'm always curious about. So anyways, definitely not going to blurt out my net worth over the internet, but I obviously don't even know how to measure it if I did want to. So do I smoke weed every day? Not every day, but most days. Is there a cricket in the bathroom? Actually, I've got the window open outside and it rained a lot today, so there are a lot of crickets right outside my window doing their thing. The beard. Definitely didn't expect this lifestyle or look with real estate. Yeah, I'll take that, warrior philosopher. I'm always trying to break the mold. Read both ads for you. Appreciate that. What's my spirit animal? I don't think I've ever really thought too much about spirit animals. As a kid, I always liked wolves. So I don't know if that is my spirit animal. I don't know, is there a whole process that one goes through in order to find their spirit animal, or is it just the random animal you like is your spirit animal? Yeah, I love Canada as well. It is a wonderful place. I've never smoked a blunt. I've never smoked tobacco. I've just got a hard personal bias towards tobacco, so I'll stick with marijuana. After how many rental properties would you want to incorporate? I appreciate the question and I understand the sentiment behind it. It really is a personal decision in regards to when to incorporate. And understand too, there's a huge difference between incorporating in Canada and setting up a corporation in the US. And there's a lot of different reasons you may want to do one in the US and you may not want to do one in Canada, or vice versa, for all I know. So first things first, understand what you're trying to do. So with any business, Judge Graham has his SPEED acronym, and the S in SPEED stands for start with the end in mind. I think if you can start with the end in mind, it's a lot easier for me to tell you whether you should or should not incorporate. For example, if you're in Canada and you're planning to maybe acquire 5-10 rental properties over the course of your lifetime, and that's going to be that, you're going to make a couple $1,000,000 in net worth. Honestly, you're probably just as well off to get an umbrella insurance policy. Pay the $600 a year, and you probably don't even necessarily have to incorporate. However, if you're looking to build a real estate empire, if you're planning to get employees, if you're really building this into a business, particularly an active business, well, then there's going to be huge arguments towards potentially wanting to incorporate. As well, are you going to be a solopreneur? Are you looking to bring on partners? Because again, the type of legal entity and structure you want to create will vary based upon like your business model and how you're looking to raise capital, whether it's through debt or equity financing. But then even just kind of beyond that, I understand that a lot of people seem to naturally assume there's only upsides to wanting to incorporate, but there's actually downsides as well. So if you're getting your lending with like an A lender, understand that an A lender will lend to a individual person at a much more favorable interest rate than they'll lend to a corporation. So you definitely need to be like aware of that. As well, you're going to have to pay to set up the corporation. Your accountant's going to charge you more per year to file taxes for a T2 than when he's doing it on your T1. And your lawyer will charge you to update the minute books and things like that. So there's a bunch of small incremental costs as well. So again, if you don't have a purpose for wanting to set up a corporation, I don't think it makes sense in most Canadian jurisdictions. But again, if you're at the point where you think it could make sense, then you're definitely at the point where it makes sense to pay for professional advice. And paying for an hour of a lawyer's time or an accountant's time is worth its weight in gold if you go into that meeting prepared. And again, understand, if you start with the end in mind, if you know where you're headed, it's a lot easier for your accountant and your lawyer to provide you with better advice, right? And again, you need to treat your accountant and lawyer like they're your best friend. Don't treat them like, they're your dentist and you're scared to go see them, or like they're an auditor and you're scared to tell them what you're planning to do. You need to really open up to your accountant and lawyer, and they need to become like core team members of your power team. Because if they understand where you're headed, they can help you build the right structures and take the right precautions at the right times. But if they don't know where you're headed, then they just have to make assumptions and guesses. And odds are, like, if you're watching my content, I'm going to guess that you're focused on maybe being a bit abnormal. And understand, most of their day-to-day is dealing with normal people. So again, you need to let them know that, like, hey, I'm building something special, I'm building something big, I'm not your average, person that's going to buy one rental property, every other year for 5 years and then stop. I'm planning to really build an active business here. Again, very valuable information for that power team member to have. All right, more questions rolling in here. What made you choose to focus on education instead of solely focusing on investing for yourself? Warrior Profit, it just kind of got boring. So if you guys don't know my backstory, started investing when I was 25. I quit the rat race at the age of 31, so about 6 years of investing. And I didn't retire like wildly wealthy. I retired like lean fire, as in like, I was like, okay, I'll probably cash flow a couple $1,000s a month, plus I can live for free in one of my rental properties. This sounds like a pretty sweet gig. I'm just going to drop out of the corporate rat race because I hate that culture and really hate the pharmaceutical industry and just a lot of what it represented. And so anyways, after about 6 months of just screwing around being an unemployed landlord, I kind of got bored of it because early 30s, none of my friends are at a retirement age. I didn't know anyone else that wasn't working a 9 to 5. So I naturally started writing like really long emails to my friends trying to explain how if they would just follow the same business model as what I was doing, within like 5 years, they'd be able to retire because of real estate investing. But those were some pretty long emails I was writing. So those emails would often be like a couple thousand words, sometimes like 5,000 words or longer. And I'm sure, as you guys can imagine, not a single person responded to those emails because that's just not what people do. Then thankfully, I happened to be reading a book at the time that said, talk to your audience in the language they want to be spoken to. And it immediately clicked for me that like real estate is such a tactile, physical, asset. And that's why so many people trust it and like the idea of investing in real estate, that I need to start documenting it on YouTube rather than just writing really long emails that no one was ever going to read. And then once I started putting out some content on YouTube and started getting like a good feedback loop, even though it was just from a very small group, that became very personally satisfying. And so once I started getting personal satisfaction out of teaching and educating people, it just became, again, an addictive feedback loop where I wanted to keep teaching more. At the same time, I'm aware that there's value in attention. Again, I don't know exactly how I plan on really fully financially benefiting or reaping the rewards of building up a social media following, but I do know there's value there. I'm sure at some point in time in the future, I'll decide to really capitalize on that. And I'm sure, hopefully that'll be financially rewarding as well, and hopefully personally satisfying as well. But for now, I just see value in attention. So it's just a undervalued asset, in my opinion. I think a lot of people don't understand what social media is. I think it's really a communications revolution on par with the printing press or radio telecommunications. And I want to try and reap the benefits of that to the best of my abilities, as well as try and influence in a good way. And that's why when I see, people like Peter, the Hungarian Experiment, doing his thing, and I think it's a net benefit to society and social media, like I want to try and help nudge that in a positive way, right? And at the same time, when I see like really bad parts of social media and the internet, I also want to be able to try and influence that for the better. So yeah, I get a lot of personal satisfaction from education, and huge rap music fan, and a lot of rappers will have different songs or lyrics about like, you're not rich until the whole team's rich. And that's something that really resonates with me, that idea that it's not just enough for you to be financially well off, you really want to be able to help the people around you. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with my little ecosystem here with the click, is just a self-selected group of individuals that are willing to go above and beyond, and then ideally be rewarded and reap the benefits of that. So not like a communist cooperative per se, but like it's just like my capitalist version of that. So it's like the exact same thing and complete opposite at the same time. It's like a lot of things. There's a dichotomy there. Are you investing in the stock market at all? Not to any level that's even worth mentioning, to be honest. I personally really like investing in assets I've got direct influence over. And so with like publicly traded equities, I just don't have the sort of juice, the sort of financial capital to be able to influence those markets or be able to influence those individual stocks. As well, insider trading is illegal with the stock market. Where insider trading with like real estate investing, when we're talking about just like knowing a neighborhood's turning around or trying to help force a neighborhood to turn around and being able to financially benefit because of that, like that's all above board. So it just makes a lot more sense to focus on investments, in my opinion, where I've got direct influence until I decide I want to be really hands off. And at that point in time, I may look at things like index funds and, just becoming a private lender and really being able to be more like a further level of abstraction away from the day-to-day operations or influencing of that business. What's going on? Instagram, where can we network with like-minded investors in Ontario? Bigger pockets is amazing, but mostly US. Bork, it's like you set me up. Cashflow Tribe. If you guys haven't checked out Cashflow Tribe, go to cashflowtribe.com or cashflowtribecanada.com. They're two different websites. We're in the process of a website migration. But I've been working really hard on creating not the bigger pockets of Canada, but what Canada deserves in its own rights. So like certainly bigger pockets has influenced us, but I honestly believe it's even more than bigger pockets with Cashflow Tribe. We've got a lot of courses and education. We've got 5 weekly live training. So I just literally did a live training from 7:30 to about 8:45 tonight. Just talking to people about real estate investing, answering their questions on a live Zoom call where I can see your face and we can interact, one-on-one. And you can sign up for a free 14-day trial with Cashflow Tribe. And it's kind of, I like to think of it as my like thesis towards Canadian real estate investing. Like it's like my one-stop compendium. And we've got some really cool calculators you guys can try out for free if you go to cashflowtribe.com. And on that like calculator, again, I created like this ultimate calculator. I still need to like dial it in and there's some tweaks that need to be made, but really proud of what we're doing with Cashflow Tribe. So really encourage you guys to check that out. What was your top 2 worst deals this far? I've overall been pretty lucky with the deals I've done because one, I always try and live by Warren Buffett's rules about investing, and rule number 1 is don't lose money. But secondly, even when I made like bad decisions, the market was hot. So like there's certainly one deal I bought that I'm not sure I deserve to make money on, but because of the circumstances, like we still walked away whole. And that was just like a illegal duplex I bought, knowing it was an illegal duplex. And then I put in bad tenants because I was just too busy doing other things. And because it wasn't like a great it was a really quirky property, just because of like all these random laundry list of issues, I just kind of shrugged about it. And so because I knew I wasn't going to make lots of money, I just kind of ignored it, which really just made the situation worse. But I mean, that's a lot of us humans, right? When something's going bad, we have a tendency to ignore that thing and try and compartmentalize it and set it aside rather than deal with it. And so I was definitely doing that with this property. But again, the market got hot. So ended up like, even though I collected like almost no rent from it and put renovations into it that didn't really pay off per se, because the market was hot, I still walked away fine. So straight up, not trying to be one of those like humble brag things, like, but that probably was the worst deal I did. And again, under different market circumstances, I may deserve to walk away with, $10,000 or $20,000 in a loss rather than not, but not the way it played out. Beyond that, like, there hasn't been any deals that were really bad. There's deals that like turned out to take way longer than I thought, or deals that cost more in renovations than I expected. But again, usually the ones where it costs more in renovations, we end up doing a better job and nicer finishes. So then we're able to get like a higher appraisal on it. So it still like overall works out. It's a different, like, we ended up at a different place than we planned on, but we still got like net positive results. So I haven't really like experienced big losses when it comes to real estate. Fingers crossed, I'll keep that streak going for a while. At the same time, it's inevitable, right? Like, you're going to have some wins, some losses. And I've got a presentation I do on real estate investing called the Great Filter Theory. And so what I'm really just taking is the concept of the Great Filter, which came about because of Fermi's paradox, right? Like this idea of, hey, if we've been sending out radio signals forever, why haven't we received radio signals from other aliens, or why haven't we got in contact with other life forms? And I use that scientific analogy, or I use that scientific situation as an analogy to explain real estate investing. Like, hey, if some real estate investors get rich, why don't all real estate investors get rich? And one of the aspects, in my opinion, is what I call the Great Filter Theory, which is just like, there's different obstacles or issues that every real estate investor will face. But when you get hit by that filter, could be at different times in your investment journey as well as in the market cycle. And so depending upon that exact timing, it might be easier for you to overcome those great filters, or it may be more difficult depending upon your exact personal context. Yeah. All right. Would you suggest a construction trade to focus on to fix houses yourself? Which trade would you make most sense to focus on? Yeah, it can make sense. Like, if you're, physically inclined or handy and you're interested in developing a skill set, going into the trades is great. Now, if your logic is, I want to save money on renovations, so I'm going to learn a trade, just understand that's kind of short-term thinking in a way as an investor, because eventually you want to get to a point where the deals or the properties you're investing in make such sound advice that you could afford to pay competent tradespeople to go do the work for you. And you're literally just the operator, the manager, the coordinator, right? The GC. So just a little bit of context there. But moving forward anyways, I would recommend, I think electricians do really well. I think plumbers seem to be a trade that's always in demand as well and can charge a lot on an hourly basis. But I think if you're entrepreneurial inclined and want to become a real estate investor and you're already inclined to go into the trades, being a plumber or electrician, I think is great. Again, that's not me hating on any other trade. Like HVAC is also great, and general carpentry or drywall is also great. So, but I would just say the ticket that you get with being an electrician or a plumber seems to come immediately with a very good hourly rate, particularly if you just want to be that solo entrepreneur and just kind of have your van, work sometimes, do some random calls and random jobs like that. You can do pretty well for yourself. But again, it really depends on what you want out of life and what you're going for. All right. Let's see what's going on YouTube. Thoughts on high income earners investing into negative carry assets, i.e. Toronto condos with higher average appreciation, with plan to liquidate into high yield stocks. Pre-condo, yeah, I understand how someone maybe comes to that conclusion as a real estate investment strategy. I personally don't like it. Now, your username is pre-condo, so I'm going to guess you might have a dog in this fight and you might have a bias towards it. Now, one thing I'm going to say is, in theory, if you invest in what you're calling a negative carry asset, such as a Toronto condo, so if we're investing in, say, a Toronto condo and it's negative cash flow or it's losing money every month, understand that the CRA in theory could challenge that and say, if you didn't have a plan to profit, that your interest expense and your loss on that isn't actually business oriented. And so now you've lost that as a tax deduction. And so what you've really been doing is just subsidizing someone's cheap rent for a very long period of time. So just be wary of that, because again, CRA has some pretty broad rules they can use, right? Like we've got GAR, the general anti-avoidance rule as well. So again, if the CRA was to look and they said, hey, your only plan here was to actually appreciate on this asset, and you never had the plan to cash flow or earn income otherwise, they might be able to come back at you and argue that you shouldn't be charged capital gains, but should be charged the on income basis in regards to the gain on that property, because that was clearly your primary business model, not cash flowing or being a landlord. So just kind of food for thought there. Outside of that, I just don't like the idea of having assets that are going to cost me money until like some random jackpot payday. So we're with pre-construction condos in particular, we're really counting on the greater fool theory. And while you may be right to implement the greater fool theory, I just don't like the lack of control I have over the situation. So really my options are, if I can't sell the condo for more money, I either have to sell it for a loss or continue holding it and losing more money until I hope that eventually it goes up in value. Now again, that's not to say a lot of people don't make a lot of money investing or buying pre-construction condos. It's just I might at least on occasion take offense to the term invest and argue they're more gambling, or they're just kind of crossing their fingers, right? Like they're more trying to buy a lottery ticket, in my opinion, than having a real valid business model. So that's probably my sharpest criticism. Now, alternatives for that is obviously max out your TFSA if you're a high income earner. RSPs can help you smooth out your tax obligations over your total lifetime. So those can be some quick fixes there. But then beyond that, again, I would rather be a high income earner, set up a corporation and build out a cash flowing business in that than solely focus on the greater fool theory for making money. And one of the reasons I'm biased towards that is when I was in public accounting, a lot of my high net worth clients that were like, say, doctors, dentists, veterinarians, they'd often get into these limited or joint venture partnerships where you lose money for the first X amount of years, but then you're going to sell for more down the road. And sometimes it didn't play out that way, or sometimes it didn't play out at the level of appreciation they were expecting. And now all of a sudden they had like an illiquid asset that they really didn't have any other interest in owning, other than they thought they were going to be able to sell it to a greater fool. And now they're kind of stuck with dead weight. So again, that's probably some of my sharpest criticisms towards pre-construction condos, and the fact that they always take longer than they're supposed to. Now, I understand the argument that you can tie up a lot of asset for a very small dollar amount, but again, most pre-construction condos now will have limitations on your ability to assign the contract until they've fully sold out the building, or it might limit your profit if you are trying to sell it to someone else. So it's not like these builders are operating in a vacuum either. They're definitely paying attention and adjusting the rules as necessary. Though at the same time, the pre-construction condo hype definitely plays into their advantage. Hey Matt, hitting a dab with you. This great question. What do you consider rich as a Canadian in 2020? Yeah, crypto, as far as what I consider rich, like my answer might be disappointing to some people. I think if you own a property that you can house or rent hack and you've got $500,000 in net worth or savings, I would consider you rich. Like there's a version where you could lead fire, at least as an individual, on that. Now, if you got a family, maybe I'm going to double that amount. But again, if you can find a way to like live for free, house hack or rent hack, you don't need much to live, especially in Canada, because we've got great medical system, great overall social safety net. I know it's not perfect, nothing is, but it's pretty darn good. When you look back on the overall timeline of history and humanity, we got it pretty sweet. So I'm very thankful to be at this stage in society. What else is going on? I say it all the time, rap is so motivational and self-confidence is totally built in it. Yeah, absolutely, ENTP life. I definitely get a lot of motivation and just energy from rap. I just love there's often a strong internal locus of control, at least with some rappers, where it's all about like, I'm just going to outwork my problems. Again, you can't obviously outwork every problem, but for a lot of us, more work is often the answer, and we just want the results faster with less work. What do you think will happen with condo pricing in Toronto area in the fall winter? I don't track it well enough. If I had to guess and speculate, I imagine it's going to stay strong. Unless it's been really hit already by COVID, I don't see it being hit now. Could we see a second wave of COVID once winter comes on? Potentially, and how that impacts the market, I honestly don't know. But right now, I am aware that there's a narrative being put out there to millennials that like they're never going to own a property again, and both them and their parents are buying into it. And because they're buying into it, a lot of them are rushing into buying, like a lot of parents are rushing into buying properties for their kids that their kids can't afford. So I imagine that's going to keep demand flowing pretty good as far as the GTA is concerned. And, you know, as borders open up and stuff again, I could see a lot of people choosing to want to become Canadians for a multitude of reasons. I think we're a very fortunate country for a lot of reasons. And again, I could see that keeping demand, like a certain floor for demand. So even though in one sentence I may say, I don't think pre-construction condos are a good investment, that's not to say that I think the condo market's going to take a giant dive either. But I think it's more susceptible than a lot of other asset classes like cash flowing rental properties in southwestern Ontario. Whatever happened to the camper van reno from way back? Hey Ron, yeah, the camper van video had great intentions with it. And my business partner just got busier with life. They had a second kid, and he just kind of set it aside, and he decided to just go buy a nicer camper van. So I think we still own it, and it's either sitting on his parents' farm or my parents' farm. But I don't think it's getting regular day-to-day use. But yeah, I would love a camper van. Recently, I've been really daydreaming about buying an island, but maybe a camper van would scratch that itch. That'd be a much cheaper itch. But I kind of like the idea of buying an island in the Muskokas. If anyone knows like an amazing realtor in the Muskokas that deals with cottages, get me in contact with them. Because one, I want to make a series of videos on this while I learn about it, but two, I'm at least very interested in buying a recreational property up there, because I just got a feeling domestic travel is going to become a really big thing in Canada. And then a lot of people are going to want to come to Canada, but I don't see why Canadians are going to want to go anywhere else. But again, maybe I'm biased and I have smoked all the Kool-Aid. As a digital marketer, I totally commend you getting your content out. There's a massive value that will live in for a long time. I'm new to real estate, so I'm a viewer because of your videos authentic. Awesome, appreciate that. What if 2008 financial crisis happens again? How about it? No one wants to rent the house. Teardrop man, maybe that happened in the United States in certain pockets, but that wasn't the case in Canada. We didn't experience that sort of turmoil. We didn't really see a dramatic drop in rent prices, or to the best of my knowledge, I don't even think you would have seen a massive decrease in demand for rent. I think it just kind of plateaued maybe for a little bit. Again, I don't have the stats in front of me, but anyways, Canada doesn't go through the same sort of boom bust cycles traditionally as the US. So one, I'm less concerned about that. Two, when I look at affordability, where I'm renting out my units is affordable from almost a universal basic income. And if you guys were paying attention during COVID, a lot of Western democracies got to kind of practice what a UBI would look like when they essentially created a temporary UBI. And so based upon like where that was, right, CERB here in Canada, based upon the sort of compensation they were giving people for CERB, a CERB person could afford to like pay for one of the bedrooms in a 2-bedroom apartment I had. So if there's 2 CERB people living in an apartment, they'd be able to afford current rents. So to me, again, from an affordability standpoint, that seems like a relatively robust business model. Now, if I was renting downtown Toronto condos for like $3,000 for a 1-bedroom, yeah, that might be a little bit scary from a long-term affordability perspective if we were to see a big change in employment or things like that. Because again, government programs aren't going to be designed to help support that individual. It's going to be on a broader spectrum of affordability. What are your thoughts on buying a franchise? Acquiring knowledge, it really depends on the franchise. I think like a lot of people that look into real estate or vending machines or car washes or franchises or buying small businesses, like we've all experienced blue chip dividend stocks, drip portfolios. Like we all look into the same shit fulfilled by Amazon, Shopify, personal brands, social media influencing, YouTube channels. Like we all research the same random businesses, right? Franchises, it really comes down to the individual franchise, right? And the agreement you have. Like understand one of the big issues with some of the big franchises you may know is like Subway. They didn't have like specific territory restraints. So you could have like Subways opening up right side by side. So when they go through, like when sometimes franchises go through these rapid periods of growth, if that franchise agreement isn't written to really protect the individual franchisee, the franchisor can just like run roughshod over them. I think I got those words right. Maybe I inversed them. But yeah. And then some franchises, really do build strong brand value and have discounts for members and things like that. But other franchises really, I don't think bring a lot of brand value. And especially like in this age of Uber Eats and skip the dishes and things like that, you don't necessarily need to have the same infrastructure you once needed. So like if you're looking at like a restaurant or a service-based business, you may not need that franchise brand the same way. And so again, the other aspect of it comes down to the management. So who's going to be running your franchise? And understand a lot of people that end up buying franchises just end up buying themselves like a good middle wage income or slightly above median income in regards to being a franchisee owner. And so if your goal is passive income, that's clearly not desirable. So just make sure that any franchise that you're buying doesn't require you to be an active operator or owner either, right? Because some of them have very strict requirements where you have to be there, or you have to go through the training or this, that, and the other. So yeah, I think like they have their place, but I'd much rather be the person that owns a company that's being franchised than buy an individual franchise. Just because usually the franchise, like the company that's owns that's doing the franchising, like they've got more resources than you. So they've got better lawyers, they've got more time to make sure that their contract's ironclad. They're probably going to stack the deck in their favor most of the time, right? Unless it's like a new franchise or it's a very unique model or something like that. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. But at the same time, I had clients that owned a bunch of franchises when I did personal taxes, and like they all did solid. Had like a few that owned like KFCs and Pizza Huts, or maybe it was Taco Bell's. But anyways, a couple of those. I think one had a Swiss Chalet, McDonald's, bunch of Tim Hortons. Yeah, it really depends on the individual franchise. But just make sure that you're not buying yourself a job unless that's what you want. All right, Matt, having a hard time finding a deal looking in red states from Ohio to Florida. Where should I look? Um, I'm not too familiar with the U.S. market. I guess first thing is you'll have to define what a deal is. But I'd be surprised if you're looking from all the way from Ohio to Florida, because I know a lot of investors that invest in both Ohio and Florida, and I know a lot of Canadians look at their market with jealousy, thinking that they've got great returns. So, like Cincinnati and Cleveland seem to be very popular with a lot of Canadian investors. So if you're looking in Ohio. Best way for a college student to get into real estate. Practically speaking, Michael, if you don't have any savings, you're either going to want to JV or wholesale to start as a college student, and then potentially look at trying to, find some sort of high income skill. And if you can develop that high income skill directly in real estate or adjacent to real estate, all the better. So high income skill could be like sales, right? So that could be a realtor, mortgage agent. It in theory could be like a tradesperson or a flipper or a wholesaler. If we're talking about like real estate specific or adjacent industries, even things like an appraiser or being a banker potentially. So yeah. Is buying a sixplex too much responsibility for a first income property? I've been researching your channel and many other sources over the past 2 years and want to start. Buying a sixplex, the first thing I'm going to say is it's just going to depend upon your like the tenant profile, right? So like, is this in a war zone? Is it D-class tenants? Because if so, buying a sixplex might be a lot of work for you if you've never owned rental property before. Where if it's in like an A-class neighborhood, it's just amazing tenants. It could be a breeze, right? If you're buying a turnkey rental property. So there's definitely not all sixplexes are created equal. But if I make the assumption that you're talking about, hey, if I was to buy a middle of the road sixplex as my first investment property, do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea? For me, kind of a coin toss. I'm going to say something that I'm sure would be popular with some investors and very unpopular with others. I think for the average person, a house hack situation is often going to be the best way to like dip a toe into real estate investing. Now, obviously there's pros and cons to living beside your tenants. But if you can get along with them, that can be a great test run of whether you want to be a landlord. Buying a sixplex, I think it can be great as your first investment. Just make sure that you understand the scope of the work you're getting into. So if you've never done renovations before, make sure you have someone that knows renovations go through that property with you. And understand like your level of personal responsibility and attention to detail will play a major factor in this as well, as far as how well this goes for you. Your first ever mortgage, if I recall, you were still in post-secondary and had some scholarships. Were you able to get it through a bank credit union, or did you have to go hard money? So my first mortgage, I was 25, so I was already working a full-time day job. Not a very exciting answer, but if I was a student and I was trying to qualify for a mortgage, the first thing I would try and do is probably find someone to co-qualify or joint venture with me on the deal that had a full-time job that was a good earner from the bank. Otherwise, I would look for a deal that really had some serious upside and try and finance it privately and probably do a couple flips first, earn some capital, and then either decide to start buying some buy and holds, or realistically, I would double down on the active income first and really build that out, and then slowly drip over into building out passive income, either through cash flowing rental properties or through just building up a debt portfolio. What are your thoughts on buying? Oh, we already did that. Is it possible to acquire a second mortgage with having a property already with a loan of 370 with my bro as a cosigner? I only make 70K and I'm trying to get another property worth 480. Abood, it's really going to come down to your debt service ratio. So you're going to have to figure out what your debt service ratios are. If you're a member of Cashflow Tribe, I've got like a massive course I created that you can check out, and it breaks down for you what your total debt service ratio is, what your gross debt service ratio is, how you can calculate that, and the usual kind of zone that the lenders most often want to see you in. But all this being said, understand where there's a will, there's a way. So if you've got a good enough deal, you can always get private financing for it, right? But if you're just trying to finance an average piece of real estate, that's where it gets difficult. So if you've got a screaming deal with built-in equity, huge upside, whatever that looks like in your market here in London, that might be getting a property worth 350 under contract for 290. You'll be able to find money to finance that deal because you've got so much built-in equity on the acquisition of that property. Whereas if you're trying to buy a property for 350 that's worth 340, then it's a huge uphill battle because why would a lender want to take on that potential risk? It's always about risk reward with private lenders. Whereas with big banks, right? Understand the retail banks, the big five banks that you guys see, they're advertising all the time. They're designed for retail consumers. You're purposely trying to become an investor. Investors don't go through retail channels. The same way that the convenience store doesn't go to another convenience store to buy its supplies, right? They're not going just to another convenience store and trying to buy their supplies there because they serve the same market. Instead, they're going to go to a wholesaler. And same thing with you guys. You need to start going more direct to the source of money and finding deals that actually have big enough margins that you can afford to pay private lenders, rather than always trying to find a deal that will fit within the retail bank's criteria and model, because their criteria and model is not designed to make you money. What time do I wake up in the morning? Usually around 6:30. I wish I woke up earlier. I used to be a bit better at it, but recently it's 6:30. Could you use hard money lending to fund part of your deal? Example, you bring 75% of the down payment and 25% from hard money lender. Yeah, you can definitely have hard money lenders be part of your financing arrangement. Quite common. I believe we're smoking GG4 right now. Not that I have any idea what that actually means, but that's what it said on the baggie. Matt, do you know anyone that does multifamily investments in BC? All your videos are based in Ontario. Yeah, I don't have a really deep network of BC investors, unfortunately. I'll need to keep working and building my network out there. Hey, what's up, Ruben? How about taking advantage of the first-time home buyers 5% down? Zach. Getting a insured mortgage can be the right decision, just depending upon the exact circumstances of what you're looking to do and invest with. Obviously, your intentions have to be to house hack that. But yeah. Should I prepare CPA while studying in school or after getting my degree? Work for a while and then trying to get CPA. I think it's easier to get your CPA right out of school. Just when you're still in the student study mode, I think it's just easier to crank that shit out. But that's just kind of how I am, because I think otherwise, had I taken a gap between graduating university and becoming a CPA, I probably just would have never done it. And I'm not saying you need to do it, but if you're planning to do it, you might as well. All right. What criteria do private lenders need for down payment of around 250 from someone with no job, and would it change if I showed them I have equity in my personal home? Yeah, so it's extremely situational, right? But let's say you're trying to buy a property worth $250,000, if I understand correctly. Or what criteria do private lenders need for down payment? Yeah, if you're trying to buy a property for 250 and we're looking at using private lenders, and you've got equity in another property and you're willing to cross collateralize, they might be willing to go as high as 100% loan to value, right? But you're going to have a very clear exit model on how you're going to get them paid out, and you're going to have a lot of equity in that other property. But if you had like $100,000 or more of equity in that other property, there's a chance they'd be willing to let you cross collateralize there. And as long as you had a clear plan to pay them back, they'd probably be down for that. So I scrolled all the way back to the top to answer that question, so I hope you're happy. Red eyes today, yeah. What do you pay your accountant a year to file your taxes, and how many companies do you have incorporated for your portfolio? So I try to keep things as simple as possible, as much as possible. So I don't have like a ton of crazy corporate structure stuff going on. What I pay my accountant is like an arbitrary amount that really won't have any good context for anyone. But understand that I think when it comes to accountants and lawyers, that's an area that you don't want to be too price conscious on. You really just want to be value conscious focused. So to me, I'd much rather pay a little bit extra for my accounting and my legal advice, but know I'm getting really good accounting and legal advice rather than try and save $100 here and there. But that's, again, just me. I've definitely got a personal bias being a CPA. What do you pay? Oh, no, all right, did that one. How do I structure my buy and hold business when all mortgages are in my name? I can quick deed future properties to LLC, but how does that affect paying mortgage out of LLC? Um, Michael, I think if you're at the point where you're setting up an LLC, it's definitely worth the time just to sit down with an accountant and really map out both what you're trying to do right now as well as where you're going. Because again, the advice that I give you right now in this moment might only be good for this, but if you're going in a different direction, then that's where having that context and really spending the time with an expert pays off. All right, I'm going to light this one more time. Once this goes out, I think I'm going to call it. So jump in the comments, hit me up with any other questions. Do you wholesale throughout all of Canada? In theory, but for us, there's really no reason to go outside of our core market, so we only wholesale in southwestern Ontario. I feel like you're missing an opportunity to name the show McKeefer Madness. I could have had a lot of different names bounce around. So Janelle had, I forget, McKeefer Fever or something like that. I came up with like I forget, Matt McKEefer Monday Madness. It was like 5 M's. What are your hobbies outside real estate investing? I mainly just do a lot of reading, like a lot of audio books as well as physical books. And I just really like kind of studying history, exploring ideas, things of that nature. And then otherwise, like my businesses and kind of the people I mentor take up a decent chunk of my day to day these days. So that, and then psychedelic drugs. That's definitely a fun hobby, but I don't partake in it. Like, it's something that I whimsically think about more often than I do anymore. But I look forward to getting back to the sort of life balance where I can do that at least once a month. Because that was a good routine. Any websites you use for market trends? No, I'm kind of like my own little aggregator of information. Um, what would be the best way to start in wholesaling with little to no capital? Door knocking. That would be by far the best. If you got no money, just get your ass to a neighborhood, start knocking doors, starting conversations, making friends, learning things, and eventually some sort of opportunity will fall into your hands. And that's what we make like most of our wholesalers do when they first join our team. Are you on any wiki yet? And what's your net worth? I'm not that famous yet that I'm on a wiki, and I'm definitely not famous enough that my net worth is on a on like a website or anything like that. Hashtag goals. Do we have any contracts for wholesaling? Yeah, if you're a Cashflow Tribe, you can see all the contracts and training that we have on wholesaling. So definitely encourage you to check that out. You can sign up for 14 days for free and literally just learn all the stuff for free. Cancel on the 14th day. You won't be charged a penny. You won't hurt my feelings. So feel free to go all in on that. Are you willing to have a co-op student? I'm a college student near Kitchener. Uh, yeah, if you're going to be a net benefit to our ecosystem, I would consider having a co-op student. If you're serious about it, send me a DM on Instagram and just use all capitals co-op. How do you not get kicked off a property knocking on doors? Don't people get pissed off? I think it really depends upon how you knock on doors in regards to the relationship you're going to get. So for us, like, we're very respectful, right? Like, we're just going to pleasantly knock on the door. I encourage my guys right now with COVID and stuff, like, wear gloves, wear a mask. If someone's not having it, just like move on, right? Like, we're not high pressure. We're literally just having a conversation. And we're never confrontational. So it's never like, hey, I want to buy your house. It's just, hey, I'm thinking about buying a house on the street. What do you think about living in this neighborhood? Do you know of anyone that might be interested in selling? Just really like having a conversation. And so people don't like it when you're trying to sell shit door to door, but when you're kind of trying to buy shit door to door, it's a whole different experience. So they're just kind of like, oh, okay, so like you're not trying to sell me shit? And we're like, no, but if you want to sell your house, we'll buy it. And it's like, okay, no, I don't want to sell you my house, but my neighbor, he might actually be thinking about it because he just got a job, in Alberta or whatever. So just have conversations, be respectful, dress nice, but don't dress too nice either. If you dress too nice, people will think that you're selling God, and they don't like it when you're selling God door to door. That's probably the thing that scares them the most. But yeah, otherwise, just be friendly. And, after knocking 100 doors, you'll get the swing of things. Just a matter of putting in the reps. Are we looking for more investors to help fund projects? Like any real estate investor, we're in theory always looking for more investors, but these days, like, really only looking for individuals that would like meet the accredited investors. So if you've got like mid six figures liquid that you're looking to invest, feel free to reach out personally, or have your investment advisor reach out to me personally, and we can chat about it. But definitely not soliciting from the general public these days. Maybe someday we'll be able to set up a business that does that, but just doesn't make practical sense right now. All right, thanks guys. Instagram's about to kick me off, so I'm going to drop off here, guys, but appreciate you hanging out for an hour with me. And let's end that. And YouTube, always a pleasure, so really appreciate you guys always hanging out with me here. And hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. Now I just need to save this on Instagram before it disappears into the ether. And yeah, I also live stream this on Instagram. Is the bathtub premium place to drop ash by accident? Yeah. No, it's just like, in your bathroom, there's no real fabrics or anything to absorb the marijuana smoke. So just trying to be respectful towards my landlord. And I've got a big window I can keep open and an exhaust fan I can turn on. So just trying to be mindful. So anyways, appreciate you guys hanging out. I'm good to roll. Hope you guys had a great Monday. I'll see you next Monday.